Thank you for joining us. This is Paul Wilson.
And Chris Emke.
And you're listening to Diesel Performance Podcast. Chris.
Man, I'm shaking my head right now. It's been crazy.
Okay,
we
guys.
say this all the time.
We have our end of summer sales still going on. So if you're listening to this, go over to DuramaxTuner.com. Give Chris a call at 815-568-7920. We got 15% off, switch on the fly, Easy Link and EFI Live tuning.
It's been crazy, man. Things are flying off the shelf. Tons of great feedback. Podcast listeners have been calling in, asking questions. I'm more than happy to help where I can. Emails work great too. But it's a great time to be part of the diesel industry with fall events going on, the weather, turbo weather, boost weather is amongst us here in the Midwest. So it puts a smile on, I think, everyone's faces that have, forced induction motors.
Somebody was just standing in the shop with me yesterday, and Nick was going to get into the 17 Ford, the regular cab.
Yeah.
He was going to go out and make some hits, and somebody else was like, man, why as soon as it gets cold out are we out here doing this shit? Yeah. And I'm like, because of boost.
Yeah. No, it's tough, man. It's tough not to be happy and smile. It's not humid and 90, 100 degrees here, which in the Midwest, it's disgusting.
That's called summer.
It's muggy. Yeah. It's just gross. Yeah, but things are just crazy.
Things are crazy, man, and they're crazy good. Guys, we also have really cool announcements coming out lately.
Yeah.
We have carb products. So carb 50 state legal products available now.
Yep.
So if you are looking for tuning on your 01 to 16 Duramax 6.6 liter or your 2.8 liter, we can set you up with actual 50 state legal tuning. And then, Chris, the other big one that just came out is our replacement TCMs.
Yeah, so we have for your basically your 08, 09 trucks, I believe.
09,
basically, if you have an A50 TCM, we offer an updated T14 TCM with our pre-tuned calibrations loaded onto it. So unfortunately, with the A50 TCM trucks, I believe it's 09 or 2010 all the way to 2015, those TCMs generally fail for a lot of different reasons. Some say it's due to static electricity from the serpentine belt.
Yep.
Regardless, they fail, and they'll end up causing the truck to go into like a range shift inhibitor, go into a limp mode. Paul, I know you've been doing a badass job on the back end, making some video awareness on how to properly diagnose that. So that'll be coming out soon. But that product is live on the site. It's been super popular already. It's an option or an avenue for fixing where it's not necessarily going to be super expensive. As you go to the dealer, you buy a TCM, then you have to have it programmed, and then guys are like, well, I want to put a trans tune on it too.
Right.
And it snowballs, right? So we offer a simple and easy drop-in replacement and go. So, go to the website, DuramaxTuner.com. We have options there, or if you have questions, give us a call.
That's right. Listeners, we also have a lot of Diesel Performance Podcast show coming at you today. We're going to be talking with a competitor at All Truck Challenge and a friend of Chris and mine. Tim Mahoney will be on the show today. We'll be talking about his experience from 2019 and his excitement for 2021 of going out to Ohio and running his 06 Cummins. Yeah. We'll talk about the build details and all of that. Of course, we'll also be hearing from our remote support expert, Sean Lynn, our super tech, Jeremy Garnett, and we have a new segment on the show this week. Chris, you are going to be talking with one of our friends, Anthony, and you guys will be going through a little bit of industry news.
Yeah, it's always cool, Paul. You think how long the podcast has been going on, and the little interest that there once was within the organization, to us now having the show. I was one of those people included, but the show's a lot of fun. There's a lot of potential opportunities, right, within the organization with the show. And Anthony, one of the sales guys over at Calibrated, was like, hey, I like getting on camera. I like doing this. I'd like to throw my hat in the ring. I'd like to be a part of the podcast. So we're going to have Anthony on. We're going to try to set up the segment where it's industry news, just 5-10 minutes, kind of go over what's new in the industry. It doesn't necessarily have to do with Calibrated, doesn't have to necessarily do with our sponsors, just in general. So be a little bit of a wider spectrum, if you will, of information that we're going to be able to bring forth to our listeners.
Absolutely. Guys, stick around. Coming at you next is going to be our conversation with Tim Mahoney. Tim Mahoney, how the hell are you?
I'm good, guys. How are you?
Doing
We're
great.
doing all right. It's been busy.
Yeah, it's been real busy. Tim, we got you on the show today, I think for the second time, to talk about the King of the Streets All Truck Challenge.
2 years
year, 2 years ago.
A couple years back.
You were able to go out with your '06 Cummins?
Yep. It's '06 or '07. I don't remember. We had an identical truck, 7 years ago now here? So it's like, I don't know which one's which anymore. '06, '07 Cummins. That's how the tunes are writ too, right, Chris? So.
Yeah, pretty much.
So Tim, you were able to go out and compete in King of the Streets. Now that's changing. King of the Streets is going to be for the emissions-equipped trucks. Right. All Truck Challenge is going to be for everybody else.
Yep.
So you have decided to enter into All Truck Challenge, and we are excited to have you on to be the first competitor. Obviously, now that we are the official podcast of King of the Streets and All Truck Challenge for 2021.
Yeah, that'll be nice. I think it's definitely a growing event. She actually put it on last year through COVID, and obviously had good enough results to continue with it this year again. So it's nice to see it back.
One of the things that I think is unique, you go to all these bigger competitions, right? And I mean, take UCC out of it, because UCC's got converted motor trucks and all the crazy stuff. But you go to an event like King of the Streets All Truck Challenge, and I remember in 19, it was just a sea of third-gen Cummins. Just a fucking sea of them, right? Different colors, different wheel setups, maybe a different cab configuration.
You remember Diesel Power Challenge voting?
Years back, yeah.
The Duramaxes would be like a page and a half, 2 pages, or there'd be
Cummins
like 3,
would be 3
4.
pages.
Yeah, and then it's just nothing but cum dogs.
So now it just kind of gets into, in I guess for what, as a spectator, it's the driver and the setup, right? Because a lot of the trucks are somewhat similar, unfortunately. So give our listeners a little bit of a rundown. 06, 07, it's a 5.9 truck. What are you bringing?
I don't know exactly what we're bringing yet.
We're 3 weeks before the competition.
Yeah, but it'll be hopefully a little bit more than we brought 2 years ago.
What was the setup a couple years ago?
It's a Stealth 67. At that point, I believe it was our 6-blade Stealth 67 on there. And with an S488 over it. So we took Worley's twin kit for a stocker over S475 and made it work with a 488. Truck dynoed at the event about 900 horsepower. Again, I think we put the kit on like 2 days before. We usually keep it with the Stealth 67 on it. So if me or you want to go sled pull it or whatever, go have some fun.
And the truck's been really good sled pulling over the last few years too, right?
Yeah, I don't know. Once in a while we get bored and take it out and go have some fun. And so right now as the truck sits, it's got the injectors out of it. It's got an 11-blade Stealth 67 on it. That really improved the drivability of the truck, and we moved that to all of our Stealth 67 third-gen Cummins stuff. And then it's going to get like an S491 over it is the plan right now.
A lot of air.
Probably more than we're going to have fuel for, but that's just, I'd rather have more air than not enough,
And then we have Exergy, just because I was emailing them a little bit ago. We're going to be getting some cool injectors coming back for us.
Yeah. Either we'll get a fresh set of Hondos or maybe 150s or 250s. I don't know yet. We're kind of just waiting to see what happens. So the Hunters that were in there were a couple motor builds old and been through some hell. So it was nice to pull those out.
How'd they test?
Get them tested and everything. I honestly think they tested good. So
really,
Rob came back. He said these injectors are great. They're clean. What do you want me to do?
I mean, what a feather in the cap for Exergy, because you guys are not lying. This truck has been worked. It went to All Truck Challenge, or went to King of the Streets 2 years ago in 19. It also got sled pulled by you two. I think you two tag teamed it about every week all summer in 19. It's also been on the dyno.
That
it's
truck
been to the
served
track.
as R&D duty for a couple years. Like, that thing's had its ass handed to it, man.
Yeah,
it really has.
And and right now the injectors that came out, they were hundreds.
Yes.
Hundreds out. Okay, hundreds out, and then in Ohio you said 900.
It made 900 on the dyno. Realistically, it was probably it had 1,000 horsepower worth of fuel in the tune, and it definitely had the air for it. I think it was the way I was loading the dyno. The more and more you get into this, like the dyno guys, like it's an art of its own, and we have a Mustang dyno here, so it's a little bit different. I don't really have to practice loading up the truck on the dyno or anything. I just hit spacebar and the truck runs through the window. So I get spoiled in how to load it, and I had the tire pressure down like an idiot, and it was what it is. It was honestly my first time competing in a big diesel event. I come from more gas world and street racing, stuff like that. So to go to a structured event where you're putting a truck on a dyno similar to UCC, it's a little bit different.
What was the toughest part of the challenge as you went to it in 19?
The truck is like really fast on the drag strip for what it is. And like with that Stalker Stealth 67 down there, the truck spools up really fast, and like I could leave on guys really easily. There's no cage in the truck, so we were kind of handcuffed with some safety stuff there. So basically, if you busted out of like, I think it was 720 or 725 in the eighth, like you automatically lost. So I had to try and leave on guys as hard as I could, and then like let off,
and then pedal it down at the end of the track.
So yeah, there's a couple. I raced like Greg A, and me and him were like, I think he busted out by like 1/10, and we were right next to each other. And then Ziegler too. Like, I remember I left on Ziegler. That was right when they were starting to get that truck dialed in and like having all sorts of problems. You knew it made horsepower, but just putting it down the track was a whole nother thing. Like, I left on him, and then right as I'm letting out at the eighth, he comes hauling past, and I busted out at like 690 at that point. So I mean, the truck's set up to go probably like mid sixes, 670 pretty consistently. So nice thing is they're actually changing that with the event this year, so they're going to allow you to do like a bracket style class. So if you don't have a cage, like we don't have a cage in the truck, we don't have to try and compete with the fastest truck. We just can compete with the dial-in and still hopefully get a decent amount of points. So
I feel like you can calculate that on the dyno then at that point. Like, you could come in a little bit more strategic of like, okay, this is the potential bracket that I want to be in. You know, you do the calculation for weight, tire size, whatever. Like, you could back into that halfway decently, or no?
Are you going to be the only guy to turn your tune down to go racing?
No. There's a lot of trucks. Buddy,
there's a lot of us doing this. Yeah.
He just gave you a dirty look, squinted his eye, and shook his head.
So like Gordon, right, good buddy of mine. He's helped me over the years with tuning tremendously, right? Like, he's got a dually. There's no cage in that truck. That truck makes 1,500 horsepower. Like,
yeah,
you know, there's a lot of people in this situation, so it's nice to see. I mean, this really is a true, what I still call a street truck challenge, right? And I can still say that about 06, 07 Dodge. So we're doing good there. Honestly, we're going to be underpowered in the event. Like, even if the truck makes 1,000, 11, 1,200, like these guys make 15, 1,600, the Josh McCormicks of the world. Like, this is what these guys live for. And then there's me who just sends tunes out all day long, and I'm so over it by the weekend, I don't want to work on my truck.
But there is more to this than a horsepower play, and there's some added events that King of the Street, All Truck Challenge is doing. So when you talk about, we focus so heavily on, okay, getting the power down the track, right? It's power. What is the event that you're looking forward to most, I guess, is what are you anticipating the most?
The truck does really well in the dirt. Sled pulling it last year, or sled pulling it 2 years ago at King of the Streets, like, I set it up like we were going to go sled pull for the work stock with a bunch of power, and like these guys were adding weight. I added a little bit of weight, but nowhere near what I should have and how these guys are. So now it's a little bit more realistic of like, hey, we're going to take this from like what we know as our work stock class to like the hot street class, you know, like we're going to hang weight. We're going to, I don't know, maybe throw dualies on the back is kind of my plan here. In the dirt, the truck works really well, specifically dirt dragging. I don't like to lose in that truck in the dirt dragging. It got second out there when we were last time. So the only faster truck was actually Greg A's. And then you had Levon was driving Jersey's truck at that event. And the Dodge actually went faster than Levon's truck in the dirt, or Jersey's truck. I mean, that truck makes 16, 1700 horsepower.
And it's a regular cab.
It's a regular cab, but it's light. So like there's certain things like wheelbase, and like it's almost like in the dirt you could have too light of a truck, too much power, right? Too much power, who says that? But so the truck does really well, and those guys actually got first and second. Me and Greg A got paired up going into the finals, and then Jersey got to race, Levon got to race him in the finals. But the truck does really well in the dirt, and I think that's part of just like, you don't have to worry about leaving hard on it, because what's the worst that's going to happen? It's going to spin. You're not going to break stuff.
Well, I think a lot of that has to do with the turbo configuration too. I mean, these guys have big 400s off the manifold, and I think there's going to be a little bit more of a process, to getting that truck to leave, and then it's in dirt nonetheless.
Isn't it a different tree out in the dirt too? Isn't it?
I think it's a pro tree. I think it's a pro tree all the way through. I believe.
Okay.
I mean, I spent pretty much my whole life either flashlight racing or pro tree racing, so like that doesn't really scare me. It is nice though, like racing the cars, and depending upon how you're racing, you're going up against racing someone with a trans brake, right, or a bump box, and it's like you could get double bulbed and you'd leave before they're even on boost, and it's like now the we kind of flipped roles here, right? Like, I don't have to build boost before I go into the first bulb. Like, the truck just comes up on power, and that's a lot of these guys have that problem with, is now all of a sudden they're 10, 15 seconds on that converter. They're going single bulb, then they're going double bulb. Now the truck in transit's hot, right? And like, I'm just coming up on power and leaving. I bump in second bulb and go. So that is the nice thing of it. The nice thing about that turbo configuration.
I always thought you were just a good driver. You just have an easy setup.
Yeah, no, it is an easy setup. Like, give me a 400 over 400, I wouldn't know what to do with myself. Yeah. Give me a little spray,
Well, I guess that's another good question. So a lot of guys are going to be coming to this competition with spray, with cages, with big power.
With race trucks.
Yeah, with legit race trucks
trucks
that they're then going to sled pull with, right? And we've seen it other challenges where guys do all night 24-hour runs to do a massive changeover on the truck overnight.
Right.
You had mentioned some of your plans to kind of change it up to go sled pulling. What's the strategy overall? Where do you think you're going to end up in the pack, and how do you think you're going to get there?
I think if we can run middle of the pack in the drag strip or better, I think that could potentially be. I think we got 8th last time, and really the goal is to be top 5, the podium finish there. So I think if we can run middle of the pack with the drag strip, not totally flop on the dyno, if we can run middle of the pack there and then come out and put really I think it's 2 sled pull heats in the dirt drag. I think if we can kind of kick ass in those events, or at least get top 3 in those events, I think the truck will do really well. And just, like I said, from learning from the dyno and how to set up the truck and stuff, I mean, there was trucks out there that I know the truck made more power of. It's just how you load it up on the dyno. And last year, I literally think, or 2 years ago, we brought Justin. I brought like 2 buddies and like a spare set of tires, and like that's all we brought. Like there's guys with like trailers and weights,
nasty
and like
loaded,
changing turbochargers. A couple guys changed his trans, and I'm like, this is like. The nice thing about the setup where the Dodge is right now, it is a true street truck of like, I hope it doesn't break, and if it breaks, other than something small, I'm probably just going to put it on the trailer because, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure we have the capacity, right? But to shut down the shop and bring a couple shop guys and bring transes and bring turbos and like that to me kind of defeats the purpose of the street challenge or, the all truck challenge as it is now. So, it's like, run what you brung. If it's too much, like, you're probably going to break something. If it's not enough, you probably will lose.
So it's that balance, right?
Yeah.
That's what life is about.
Street car, man.
I like that. I like that strategy. It's nice to go at it and want to go out there and have some fun. It's not the end of the world one way or the other. Obviously, we all want to go there and win, right? Like, nobody shows up to a truck competition and like, I don't care. Like, come on. Like, we all want to be up at the first place. Who do you think are going to be some of the top competitors this year?
I don't know a ton of these guys in the heavy power industry, I guess you could call it. Most of our business is obviously now my main job here is carb certification, right? So like the 06, 07 stuff is just like not my cup of tea. I know these guys who have been around for a little bit. I mean, Gordon's truck, got to race with him 2 years ago. I mean, that truck makes good power. His first day out, he broke the truck last time.
Yeah.
So like didn't even really get to have fun and enjoy it. I think Josh McCormick at that point, I know he had wanted to come, but he was I don't even think he was doing the YouTube stuff at that time. Like his truck was broken. He just flew out just to kind of support the event and hang out with everybody. So it's going to be nice. I mean, that kid, guy, whatever you want to call him, I refer to everybody as a kid, right? Like kind of like Paul, right, kid? It's going to be nice to see him competing and how he's grown over the last couple of years and what that has grown into. And David Petrick, I don't know if he's competing this year. He competed 2 years ago. He was at UCC this year. I mean, those guys, like, this is what they do,
Yeah.
So,
I mean, there's a very large competitor roster this year.
Yeah, the number of trucks, which we'll have some specifics on here, guys, in some future episodes. We're going to be going through some details, and like we said, we'll be interviewing just about everybody we can involve with the event. It is a growing competition, and now that we're not seeing Diesel Power Challenge happen this year, we don't know what the future of that looks like. Some of the other qualifier events that were getting really big for UCC, they've kind of dropped off from doing that. They're not doing the qualifier stuff anymore. So this is like there's a demand. There's people who want to go out and they want to do this type of a challenge. The dyno days are great. I think everybody loves going out and seeing a truck run on the dyno. But the thing I always hear at a dyno day is, okay, now let's go race them.
Right.
And this is one of those challenges where you get to see this over 3 days.
It's a mix of flavor. You know, you have dirt drag, which in the Midwest, like that's becoming as popular as sled pulling, right?
For sure.
And then you have, drag racing, which is popular all over the U.S. What I think is most surprising, or like where you have something here, is when guys are willing to travel halfway across the country. UCC is the biggest event of the year, right? And that's designed for a purpose, and guys travel all over and out of the country for. But then you have All Truck Challenge, King of the Streets, where when even a few years ago when they were smaller, you had guys flying from West Coast to Ohio.
Yeah.
You have some of these guys that are from the West Coast now that are competing this year, right? And they're driving 18, 20 hours to run what they brought, right?
It's a long ride home with a broken truck.
It's a long ride home with a broken truck, and that is a lot of competition in a 3-day. Drag racing, sled pulling, dirt drags, dyno, the fuel mileage test that they're going to be doing, like. Where this year they're doing a 15-minute idle, if you remember, Paul, Sarah was telling us about, like, and these aren't like, oh, I get one drag strip pass, I get one, dirt drag pass. Like you're lapping the truck. You're going to be using the truck. So it's a crazy weekend. Like that is a lot of shit per truck that they're going to have to go through to keep, up and running.
Absolutely correct. I'm
2 years
excited.
ago, it was a 100-mile street cruise, and like some of these guys were, dude.
And that's what Sarah. I mean, and to kind of go back on our previous interview with Sarah Chapman, she said exactly that. Like the main focus of All Truck Challenge is real street trucks.
Yeah.
They want to take out the true competition or true race trucks. Making great power is one thing, but prove it on the street, and that's something that she was very keen on.
Well, I think that's an interesting twist to the whole thing, because as I think the three of us work in the diesel performance industry, we know that, like, hey, if you want a truck that goes really fast and competes at all of these other competitions, we could probably build that. That's not crazy. That's not like you don't have to do something brand new that's totally unique to achieve that goal. But to do that and be able to take it for 100 miles, if I remember correctly, in 19, the 100-mile street cruise took out more trucks than the dyno did.
Yeah. No, it did. I mean, you had guys who broke during the cruise. You had guys who didn't even make it to the cruise. And then you had guys who came back and, like, oiled down the side of the truck, turbos blown. Like, and that 100-mile cruise was through. It's not like you get on the highway and you're cruising 75, 80 mile an hour for 100 miles. And they're like, this stop and go 100 miles through Amish country. It was a 2.5-hour drive. I remember, like, I had Justin and I don't know if it was Ryan Wood and Kiefer or what in the truck with me. And they're like, can we stop and get some food? Like, this is taking forever. So, and it was a little bit later.
In the competition truck.
Yeah.
You have dudes
this year we might need the AC. So.
But I think that, Paul, to your point, that's a really good statement to make is, you go through these magazines and you see these competition trucks and, you see all this ungodly horsepower that these trucks make. But a lot of those trucks, if they're not at that competition, they're sitting in a shop or they're sitting in a barn or they're sitting in a garage in pieces waiting to be fixed.
Yeah, they're trailered to events, right?
Where, like, there's no secret. A couple of years ago when we were, when 19 before, COVID with sled pulling, like, we did trailer the truck to the event at a sled pull because if it broke, you'd load it on the trailer and drive it home. But, like, a month ago, I was driving Mavtron every day to and from work because I didn't have my truck. The truck was tied up in the shop and I needed something to drive.
Sure.
So like that truck does get driven. It does have air conditioning. It does have all of the amenities of what a 2006 Ram had from the factory. Just little extra, punch.
Little extra go. We took it out. What was it? Was it Pecatonica Dirt Drags? I took it out to.
Yeah.
What, month and a half, 2 months
drove
ago?
It?
Drove it there, drove it back, had people in the truck.
Picked me up the next day, went and got coffee for work, like, like no big deal.
Just your average driver, man. Yeah. Other than, like, I think I got to fix the headlights. Like, one headlight has a low beam and the other one has a high beam.
And there's some trucks at this competition that don't even have headlights.
Headlights, wipers. I remember a couple years ago, there was guys getting into it because, like, truck didn't have wipers, truck didn't have this, truck didn't have that.
But those are real things.
Yeah.
Well, that's what makes this competition unique, right?
Yep.
Because like you said, we could go to UCC and see the biggest, most outrageous, also like the most money spent in a lot of cases, even on the low end of the budget.
Up.
No, but it's a
you
part
hate
of
to bring
it.
that up. No, that is a big money and time, Paul. Money and time. That's
it,
everything.
Man. And I'm not trying to take away from any of those.
No,
trucks.
they're
I think
badass,
that's
but there's
an
a
awesome
place for
thing
that.
to spend your money on.
There's a place for that.
And to be clear, you can't just buy your way into winning UCC. Like you could spend a lot of money and still end up in last place.
No.
We've seen that.
No.
But yeah, I think with this challenge, I think that's one of the parts that's really exciting for people is it makes it feel more obtainable. It makes it feel like I could do that.
Right.
And like, I mean, if Tim could do it, I could do it.
Definitely.
Right. I mean, you just heard him say like, "Nah, I just hit the gas and I tree on these dudes."
That's it. I just tree them.
Yeah.
No big deal.
Some people forget to hit the gas, so I mean, we're doing all right there. But the other thing I want to point out too, Paul, is like you get guys who are like from that Central Ohio area and stuff like that too.
Yeah.
Who it's like I call him a previous customer of ours because I think the setup is like over what we do now essentially. But Joey Adleman, he's competed the last couple of years. Like first year I competed with him in 19. Like that truck had our prototype VVT 72 mil on it. Like and like I'm pretty sure dude kicked ass. Like he had dualies on it, he had weight hung. Like all that guy does is sled pull all year long. And like he kicked ass with an 900 horsepower truck. Like kicked ass in the sled pull. So it's like you get those guys who are like, hey, you know what? I might not have the fame. I might not have the Instagram page or whatever, right?
Sure.
But it's like, I'm going to kick your ass in one of these events, right? So it's cool to see those guys too. And like that's a truck that gets driven. That's a truck that, you know, it's what its job is to do is get beat on. Doesn't have to have 22-inch wheels. And
it goes to the diesel power challenge stuff all over again, Paul. You know, the diesel power challenge in what it was originally like set up for, it was that street truck, the baddest of the baddest in the U.S. that got voted in.
Yeah.
And like I keep falling back to that interview with Sarah and what really started the spark for King of the Streets originally. But like that's the main focus here. You know, that's everything is a real street truck, a drivable truck. You know, there's this difference of, oh, I drive my, 1,500 horsepower, 1,000 horsepower truck on the street versus, hey, you know what, I need to tow a trailer tomorrow. I'm going to use my 1,000 horsepower truck to do that, and be cool with it, right?
Yeah, this is the drag week. This is the Rocky Mountain Race week of what is available currently for diesel events. And, like, unfortunately, while everyone else is, like, I don't know, running back with their tail in between their legs, like here's the event that is still out there, is getting pushed. Like it would be cool to take a truck and do a Rocky Mountain Race week or a drag week, right? But like now there's all the speculation of like what I can drive on the street, what I can't drive on the street, truck smoke on the street. You know, it's like, so it's nice to still have an event where it is based around trucks that we drive on the street, and we're pushing those to the limit, you know?
I like that. Tim, I wanted to ask you about having the new setup on the truck. So you said you're doing like a 591 or
491. Yeah,
491.
It's I believe it's a forced induction setup. I've always run just like box Borg Warner stuff. Like I've always had really good luck with them. And when we had the Jeep stuffs, we got a really killer deal on them too, which helps. But so yeah, this is basically like a 488 with, I believe it's like forced inductions, little turn on it. So 491
wheel mod. Okay. How different do you think that setup is going to be? I mean, you were 3 weeks from the event. We know that you have a lot of drag racing experience, but it doesn't sound like you're going to have a chance to have a lot of seat time. I saw your truck yesterday.
Yeah.
It is torn the fuck apart, man. Like
I'm going on vacation on the 1st too for a week, so
next week. Okay, so you're going on vacation next week. So your practice time with the new turbo setup, not something you're concerned with?
Nah, we'll just like I forget when we were out with the dirt drags or whatever. I was like, I could sleep in this truck and drive it. Like it is nice to have that, but unfortunately with time frame and family and everything else that goes on, it's like, if we have 2 days, put the truck on the dyno, get the tunes somewhat close, like make some power with it, awesome.
And Paul, keep in mind too, like drivability and learning how to drive the truck in the turbo setup, a lot of that has to do with the manifold charger. And that's not changing. So if you have the fuel and you have the air,
that's kind of my next question here.
Fingers crossed.
So you're going up in fuel and up in atmospheric charger.
Yeah, and a little bit looser housing. So if anything, it's going to take a little bit longer to spool. The nice thing is we had that 115 housing on the 488, so like it came up instantly. Now we're going to do a little bit bigger housing. I think we're going to do a 132, but it definitely a bigger turbine on the 491 as well, but I don't think it'll be a problem. I mean, like, throw some negative timing in it and call it a day.
Spoken like a tuner. Well, I appreciate that, Tim. Any advice that you want to share for somebody who is thinking about getting into a competition like this in the future?
Get out and do it. I mean, we made the call. We signed up. Like, I would have taken the truck with the 11-blade 67 on it with hundreds. Like, if the injectors don't come back, if we stick hundreds back into it, we're going. Like, we're going to go have fun, you know? And that's what it's about. It's about having fun and competing. You know, it's like you don't have to have the greatest stuff out there to go compete. Like, by the time your truck is done how you think it is, like, there's going to be no events left. So get out, support these events, support the racers. Just go have fun and see what the industry's about.
Well, that's great advice. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Listeners, stick around. We got more Diesel Performance podcasts coming at you right after a word from our sponsors.
XDP coolant filtration systems help increase the longevity of your cooling system by filtering out contaminants before reaching vital engine components. The coolant filtration system is designed to catch any debris floating in your cooling system before it gets caught in important components like your EGR cooler. The system is designed with easy-to-install pre-assembled silicone hoses and specially made mounting brackets so you can bolt this kit on with basic hand tools. Each kit includes a billet CNC machine aluminum filter base that is anodized with a black finish for superior underhood aesthetics. The included ball valves allow for minimal coolant loss during filter replacements, as well as a shutoff to bypass the system if needed. To find out more about XDP's line of coolant filtration systems, check out xdp.com or find a local dealer near you.
What is Worley Custom Fab's thermostat bypass valve, and why is it an important upgrade for your 2017 to 2019 L5P Duramax? 2017 to 2019 L5P Duramax trucks feature a unique thermostat assembly for the Allison transmission, which allows fluid to bypass the auxiliary cooler and use engine heat in the radiator coolant to reach ideal operating temps more quickly in cold weather. When the desired temperature is reached, the thermostat is supposed to open and allow fluid to flow forward into the auxiliary cooler, which helps maintain transmission fluid temperatures at a safe level. Now the issue. This thermostat is prone to get stuck closed, so when the fluid gets hot and reaches the point that it needs to be cooled via the auxiliary cooler, the fluid is instead bypassed by the closed thermostat and returned to the transmission uncooled. Hotter fluid breaks down quicker, which leads to poor fluid performance and potentially premature damage and shortened transmission life. If you tow with your truck or live in a warm climate, this bypass plug is a must. Whether your truck is a daily driver, work truck, tow rig, or competition race truck, this is an issue that plagues all 17 to 19 L5Ps. When running one of WC Fab's shop trucks at the drag strip, they noticed temperatures reaching the unsafe zone. After some investigation, they found the auxiliary cooler up front was cool to the touch. The hot fluid was not making its way to the cooler. Upon further research, they found that even factory stock trucks were experiencing the same issue. With this discovery, the thermostat bypass plug was born. The CAD-designed, CNC-machined, anodized billet aluminum bypass plug requires a simple 15-minute installation. WC Fab has been building high-performance transmissions for the L5P platform for many years now and immediately started including this made-in-the-USA piece with every transmission that they build. Tested in-house on both their shop trucks and customer trucks, the transmission cooler thermostat bypass plug for 2017 to 2019 L5P Duramax trucks can drop the fluid temperature from 15 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit by reducing fluid flow restriction to the trans cooler. The Exergy Performance Fuel System Saver works. If you have a CP4 equipped fuel pump, which is commonly found on the 2011 to 2016 LML Duramax, and also the early 6.7 liter Ford Power Stroke engine, they're known for failure, period. Now, most of the time, if you put a lift pump on the truck, you'll prevent a lot of the potential failures. If you do regular maintenance, you can help prevent the potential failures. But at the end of the day, there's still a risk that no matter what you do, that CP4 could fail. And when they fail, they have a track record for sending all of the metal shavings downstream. So you end up needing a whole new fuel system, new lines, new injectors, new tubes, new everything. that could be very expensive. Even if you're under warranty or you find a bundle package for a great price, there's still a lot of labor that goes into that job. The fuel system saver increases the amount of protection post CP4. So it's not going to stop your CP4 from failing. What it's going to do is that, God forbid, the CP4 gives up and it starts to send metal debris through the truck. It's going to stop it before it hits the rest of your fuel system. And that's why they call it the fuel system saver. If you have a CP4 pump on your truck, you absolutely need to give DuramaxTuner.com a call today and get yourself a fuel system saver. Remote support expert Sean Lynn, how the hell are you?
Great. How are you, Paul?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks for joining us. Sean, we got a good one today, I think. We're diving into some of the finer points between very similar engine platforms, and that's the L5P, the L5P cabin chassis, and then the L5D. Now, a lot of people out there would assume that an L5P cabin chassis is an L5D, as in Delta. Is that correct?
No, it's actually not even close to being the same thing. The L5P cabin chassis would be very similar to the normal pickup truck version.
Gotcha. Okay, so there's the body difference then that we're talking about. So is this like a 4500 compared to a 3500?
The cabin chassis is normally a 3500, and then the L5D is the 4500 and up, yes.
Gotcha. Okay. Those L5Ds look nasty.
Yeah, I think we've had like 2 or 3 of them come in here with like 40-inch tires, so we've definitely gotten our fair share of them.
Yeah, we've been doing a lot of tunes for them. Now, we do switch-on-the-fly tuning and single tunes for all of these platforms, so we can tune any of these trucks. The L5P cabin chassis might have some switch-on-the-fly tuning quirks to it, but you definitely can do single tunes on them for sure. So, and then I know like we did Jason Worley's L5D. That was the first one we worked on, and that thing just looks sick.
Yeah, he spent a lot of time on that, and it sure shows.
Absolutely. Well said. Okay, so lay it out for me, man. Besides the 4500 versus 3500 and below, like that break there, what are the difference between these 3 vehicles?
Well, I mean, first of all, you have your standard L5P, and that's just the normal pickup truck version, comes with a bed on it. About 400 wheel horsepower from the factory is what we've tested here. The L5P cabin chassis would be a 3500 that may or may not come with a bed on it, like a service truck kind of thing.
Sure.
And those typically baseline at 350 wheel horsepower, so a little bit less. They turn the power down because you're supposed to be hauling a large trailer with it at all times.
Yeah, that's the idea, is it's going to be a workhorse, right?
Or a lot of weight in the bed, depending on what setup you have. And then moving to the L5D, this is your 4500 and up. The newer ones, I believe, are on an international chassis, and they don't have exactly the same setups as the 3500s do. So you have a slightly smaller turbo and then a 316 wheel horsepower baseline. So it's really set up to haul, and they just turn down the power yet again.
Absolutely, yeah. I know I was reading a little bit on the L5D, and you're absolutely correct. It was an international and GM joint venture to work on that chassis and that setup. What's really cool is International runs these trucks and a lot of their service trucks. So if you see like ComEd trucks and out and things like that have kind of that GM-looking front end, it's actually just a rebadged L5D 4500, 5500, 6500. So there's quite a bit of these vehicles on the road, although you may not spot them. I think the Chevy and the GM version definitely pop out. You see them right away. Now, do they run, is it just a Chevy version, isn't it? There's no GM on these? I can't remember.
I don't think I've ever seen a GMC personally. I've only ever seen a Chevy. And it has like that 15 Silverado 1500 looking front end on it.
It is kind of square and flat and big headlights, yeah.
Yeah, it looks like the front of a 15 Silverado 1500, like the exact same headlights if I had to guess.
Yeah, absolutely. So they are cool trucks. There is a little bit difference in them. It's always interesting to me when we look at how when we go into larger trucks and larger loads, the OEM has a tendency to reduce the turbo and reduce the power. That's one of those things I think guys generally overlook is the value of torque at low speeds and at low RPM. That's the whole point of diesel. And those smaller turbos tend to perform really well in that operating range. However, with a tune, which, trust me, dear God, if you've ever driven one of these trucks stock, they need a tune. With a tune, it is a night and day difference.
Yeah, and that's pretty much why Jason came to us, obviously. He said the thing could barely get over 60 miles an hour, if I remember correctly, with the trailer behind him, and now he has no problem doing at least 80 with a load behind him.
That's it, man. That's it. The proof's in the pudding. Excellent. Well, Sean, thank you so much for coming in and sharing some knowledge with our listeners today.
Well, thanks for having me, Paul.
No problem. Guys, stick around. Coming up next, we're going to have our super tech, Jeremy Garnett, talking to us about a very interesting shop job. All right, folks, we got our super tech, Jeremy Garnett, in the shop here. Jeremy, how the hell are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks for asking. Jeremy, we got a fun one to talk about as far as diagnostics go. Now, when we left off last, where were we on this truck? This is a truck from one of the previous episodes, right?
Yeah, this is going to be a truck from what we talked about last week, the CP3, CP4 jobs.
Gotcha. Okay.
So we're going to continue into the LML, the CP4 portion.
Perfect. Now, CP4s on LMLs, known to fail. Also on Fords, known to fail. Generally, we like to do an Exergy Sportsman or an Exergy 10 mil pump. Or actually, I think on the CP4s, they only have a 10 mil.
Yeah, they only do a 10 mil.
They only do a 10 mil on those. So we do generally like to do the Exergy 10 mil pump on those. But not everybody goes that route. Sometimes we do just an M prop, and sometimes we just do a full factory replacement.
Yeah.
Where did you go with this job?
This one here, the customer, like I stated in the past, it had 400,000 miles on it. We went just an OE route. So the guy he didn't even want to put a lift pump on the truck. So he didn't want to do a lift pump. He just wanted to put my CP4 in. Let's get the truck back on the road so I can put another 400,000 miles on it.
Sure.
He's like, why do I need a lift pump when I drove this long?
Oh, hard to argue that logic.
hard to argue. Right. And it wasn't actually a CP4 like blown up failure. It was a 400,000 mile failure.
Yeah.
So
even more rare, right? Yeah. Okay. All right. So how'd it go?
Well, what I want to get into this week is just like with the mileage on it and with it being a CP4 failure and hard to diagnose, as in, like I said before, it wasn't building rail enough to start, but once the truck was started, it would run fine.
Okay.
That's kind of where I wanted to go with that, is because, how hard we were scratching our heads and diagnosing and going into this.
Right.
So with getting myself involved, I brought Nick in and helping diagnose and picking his head and, stuff like that. Where we ended up...
Nick from Duramax Tuners, usually a good guy to talk to about Duramax diagnostics.
Yeah,
I'm with you.
Yeah, exactly. So, sometimes when we have hard stuff in the shop and Nick's walking around, we pick his brain.
Sure.
And he actually loves to sit there and talk with us and try to help us figure it out sometimes. So,
all right.
But yeah, when we were originally diagnosing, we all went, hey, we need a CP4. So we went ahead and we put a CP4 in it, and then we got the truck going, and then we just noticed that there was other problems with the truck. So we actually had to put a set of injectors in it as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Because we talked about this one, and the M-Prop screen came out, and it was clean.
Yeah.
So we didn't see debris in the M-Prop, so we assumed rail, injectors, all that, no visual damage.
Exactly. MM3 on the injectors was perfect. So when you're doing your scan data and the truck's running, you're watching all your data. MM3 was a little high on the injector balance itself, so the complete set was a little high, but then each individual injector was all within reasonable spec.
Okay.
For being, 400,000 miles.
Yeah.
So, and again, that's why we all went the route of CP4, not building enough, low side pressure to build high pressure and get the truck to start. So we did all that. And again, it did help. I'm not telling you it wasn't bad, because it was bad, but it wasn't the complete problem with the truck. So
really,
yeah, so what we ended up finding in the end is the injector return rates. So the injectors were actually returning too much fuel.
Okay.
So the injectors,
Okay.
now the new CP4 was supplying enough fuel,
Right.
where it wasn't supplying enough fuel to begin with because the pump was going bad.
Right.
Now it's getting the fuel. Now the injectors are returning too much fuel.
Oh, goodness. Oh, goodness. This is one of those that you find, especially on these higher mileage vehicles, where it's like one problem, you fix it, and you find out, well, that I don't know if it's a chicken or egg thing here about like one caused the other necessarily,
Right.
as much as it's more like all of these components went through the same amount of wear and tear.
Right.
So just because one failed, obviously, doesn't mean that the other ones are perfect health.
Exactly. And you couldn't have said any better, right? And then that's where we ran with it. So, we spent hours getting back into this thing. Okay, what the hell is wrong? I mean, the truck runs great. The injector balance rates are perfect. Like, you would never think a set of injectors at that point. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time. I mean, even here, like I said, Nick's back involved again. He's walking around, hey, what's going on with this truck? And like even he himself was shocked.
Sure.
Like, hey, you know what? We tested it, and then we so the test on this truck is through all data, and then your tools online. It's watching the flow rate, so the milliliters coming out of the injector return. So, and the driver's side, we got like 8 milliliters after 15 seconds of cranking.
Okay.
But the passenger side, we got 120 milliliters of fuel after 15 seconds of cranking.
You don't have to know a lot about the metric of measurement as much as the gap
It,
between these, right?
And that's
Like
why I said it, yeah.
How many milliliters doesn't matter as much as how far apart these two sides are.
Exactly. And that's right. That's why I kind of left it at that. But yeah, I mean, 120 milliliters is a lot of fuel.
Oh, my
So
God.
it was basically returning everything that it was getting.
Oh, my God.
And then we actually dug into it a little bit more, and this truck has been pieced together. I mean, it's, obviously somebody's been in it before, and so dig into it more with the injectors and stuff. And then next thing you know, it's like someone replaced one injector on one side, one injector on the other side. And yeah, we put a set of injectors in it, and the thing fired up. And
I find, and I'm not even ragging on Ford guys, but I find Ford guys do this a lot where it's like, oh, you have one bad bank or you have one bad injector. Okay, I'm going to spend the money. I'm going to replace this bank. I'm going to do this side. And it's like, don't do a side. Do the whole side. Do it every time. If you got to spend more money on getting better injectors, do that as opposed to doing it twice.
Yeah.
Especially with an LML where it's not a cheap job.
No, it's not cheap, but it's not an easy job either.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's deleted or not. It's not the easiest job.
Does not make it any easier a little easier, but it's not easy once it's deleted to go and do an injector job on an LML. That's for sure.
No, because half the guys that delete those trucks anyways, they leave half the crap in there anyways. So
yeah. You still got to remove just as much. I get that. Well, that's awesome, man. That's a surprising way that truck was going to go.
Yeah.
Right. I don't think any of us would have guessed that right off the bat.
No, and that's exactly it. And I went into it, as in I was 100% confident, like, hey, this thing's got a bad CP4.
Yeah.
And I wasn't wrong. It just wasn't 100% right either. So.
It just wasn't the only thing wrong.
Right, exactly. I mean, I'm not going to tell you, I'm God's gift, but here it's, I do have a good idea, and and it just, this one struck me, and it got to me.
That's awesome, man. Well, hey, good story. Thank you so much for sharing it with our
no
listeners. Guys, stick around. We got a brand new segment of the show coming at you right after this.
All right, guys, it's time for diesel industry news. I'm here with Anthony Bernini. Anthony, how are you, man?
I'm good, dog.
Anthony, we wanted to bring you on to help keep our listeners up to speed on, diesel performance news, the industry as a whole. Before we dive in, why don't you give our listeners a little bit of your background on diesel performance?
My background, diesel performance, it's been happening for quite a few years now. I know I've been on the podcast a couple times, talked about my LOI.
Yeah.
I've got a truck right now that's getting some work done. I've had another LB7 in the past. Grew up with friends that had Cummins, PowerStroke, Duramax, all the big three. And so, I've been around it for probably five plus years now.
Okay. And you handle some of the accounts over at Calibrated Power, deal with a bunch of end users all over the country and overseas.
Yeah.
So you're in with the in crowd when it comes to the industry itself, right?
Yeah, I'd say so.
So what are some of the new things going on? What's hot? What's going on in the industry right now?
Well, the biggest thing that's going to be coming up soon here is Rudy's Truck Jam. They got two. They've got the spring and the fall, beginning of October. That's when the fall one kicks off.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's going to be the newest thing. They didn't really have much going on with COVID last year.
A lot of stuff, man.
Yeah,
a lot of stuff was
it's
down
been
last
nuts.
year.
But spring had a great turnout, and the fall is going to be expected to have a good turnout too.
Now, I usually expect to see records being broken when I hear Rudy's, because the Rudy's Spring is kind of like that big first event to kick off the season. And then I expect generally to see crazy stuff happen in fall, because that's the last major event before, the season's pretty much over. What are some of the highlights that we saw over in the spring at Rudy's Truck Jam?
I mean, some of the spring or highlights, excuse me. I mean, they've got the racing. I mean, everybody's there for the drag strip, and it seems like you're talking about the records. When you see these trucks, no matter how much we see them, you see a gutted single cab with no bed. It seems like no internals. Like, it's just It gets people excited. So I mean, you've got the racing, you've got the show and shine, dyno. They've got everything.
They have a
going on
full
there.
weekend event going on.
It's pretty
Then they
intense.
have a dirt drag new this year, right?
Yeah, dirt
That's
drags
crazy.
are new this year. Yeah.
And dirt drags are really starting to kind of, take way. They're all over the place.
They're fun. Yeah, fun to watch, fun to drive in too.
Very cool. And they have an array of sponsors, I would assume, for something like that.
Yeah, I mean, you've got big names like Carolina Diesel Trucks, guys I'm pretty close with, XDP, Fast, RevMax, Firepunk. Everybody's
Companies that we do business with and deal with on a day-to-day. And then there's we have another event that are coming up the week after, correct?
Yes,
What do
we've
we
got
got
the
going
All
on there?
Truck Challenge. We did that. I believe it's been 2 years now since we were there. Again, with COVID and everything last year, we've got a couple big names. We've got us are going, and then Josh McCormick. I know you're real good in with him. I mean, that's going to be a huge turnout as well.
Paul and I are definitely covering a lot of the All Truck Challenge that will be going on. What are the dates for that?
That is going to be the weekend of the 15th through 17th in October, so just right after the Truck Jam.
Well, there'll be more industry news coming up. I know that as these events shape up and take way, you'll be doing some notes. You're going to be putting together some information for this segment so we can keep our listeners up to speed. For today, this has been Chris.
This is Anthony.
No, I just hit the gas and I tree on these dudes.